In today's stories, we follow 5 people whose fatal mistakes turned their homes into hunting grounds for deadly predators. From a Florida real estate agent who sat too close to the water's edge, to a California vineyard worker whose garage became a bear's feeding ground. But first, we start in Alaska, where one open window turned a quiet evening into a nightmare. It was July 14th, 2016, in Anchorage, Alaska, where the summer nights stretched endlessly under the midnight sun. Vardo Plath's modest wooden house sat among towering spruce trees on the city's wooded outskirts, a quiet refuge for the 63-year-old retired diesel mechanic. The property backed against dense wilderness, where brown bears roamed freely, their massive forms occasionally glimpsed by residents who knew to keep their distance. Plath lived a solitary but content life, spending his days fishing the nearby rivers that had made Alaska famous. His freezer stayed packed with fresh salmon, the reward of countless hours casting lines into rushing waters. During warm summer evenings, he would sit at his kitchen table repairing fishing gear, while the television provided background noise. The oppressive heat of that July had forced him into a habit that would prove fatal, leaving his ground floor kitchen window partially open to catch any cooling breeze drifting through the forest. The retired mechanic was known throughout his neighborhood as a creature of habit, rising early each morning to tend his small garden before heading out to his favorite fishing spots. His quiet demeanor and predictable schedule made him respected among locals who often saw him walking to the river with his tackle box in hand. Neighbors frequently commented on the strong smell of fish that came from his property, particularly during cleaning sessions when he processed salmon on the back porch. That summer, salmon runs had dropped to unusually low numbers, forcing hungry predators to venture deeper into residential areas in search of food. The scent of fish scraps and packaging in Plath's kitchen trash bin created an invisible trail leading straight to his home. Brown bears are among North America's most powerful animals, with adult males weighing up to 800 pounds and possessing immense strength capable of tearing apart wooden structures in search of food. Their exceptional sense of smell can detect food sources from miles away, making them incredibly efficient scavengers as well as hunters. Their intelligence allows them to problem solve when obstacles stand between them and a meal, often learning to open unsecured doors or break into cabins containing food. These massive animals can run at speeds of 35 miles per hour despite their size and possess claws measuring up to 4 inches long, capable of delivering devastating blows. Around 1:30 a.m., a massive male brown bear emerged from the tree line, following the irresistible aroma of salmon building in intensity as it approached Plath's property. The animal moved quietly through the yard until it reached the rear of the house. Drawn by the scent coming from the kitchen trash, the bear began pawing at the back door and nearby window frame. Sensing the opening, the bear forced its massive head through the partially open kitchen window, then widened the frame with several powerful blows of its forelimbs until the wood splintered and the glass broke away, creating an opening large enough for the animal to climb inside. The kitchen erupted in chaos as the bear immediately began tearing through garbage bags, consuming every scrap of fish remains it could find. Plastic containers scattered across the floor as the animal's powerful claws shredded through packaging like paper. The sound of crashing dishes and overturning furniture filled the house as the bear ransacked cabinets searching for food. The violent commotion jolted Plath from deep sleep in his upstairs bedroom, the unusual sounds cutting through his dreams. Confused and disoriented, Plath padded down the hallway in his pajamas, completely unaware that a massive bear was inside his kitchen. As he descended the creaking stairs, the sounds grew louder, but his sleepy mind couldn't process the true nature of the threat awaiting him. As Plath appeared in the kitchen doorway, the bear's massive head snapped up from the scattered trash, its dark eyes locking onto the human figure. Startled at such close range, the animal reacted instantly. Its enormous forepaw lashed outward in a defensive swipe, striking Plath across the chest and shoulder with tremendous force. The blow hurled him backward into the wall, fracturing ribs and causing catastrophic internal injuries. Bear attacks often involve powerful swats rather than bites, and this single strike proved devastating. Plath collapsed onto the kitchen floor, struggling to breathe as severe trauma and internal bleeding overwhelmed his body. The bear, still focused on the food it had found, backed away from the fallen man and resumed tearing into the garbage rather than continuing an attack. Within minutes, Plath lost consciousness from the injuries inflicted by the massive animal. The bear remained in the destroyed kitchen for several minutes, continuing to feed on the trash that had drawn it into the home, before eventually wandering back outside into the darkness. When concerned neighbors contacted authorities for a welfare check the following morning, they discovered the house heavily damaged and signs that a bear had broken in during the night, prompting wildlife officers to investigate the encounter. Vardo Plath's story was a heartbreaking reminder of how quickly a bear encounter can turn fatal when a startled animal reacts with overwhelming force. For Mindra Twig, it wasn't a forest predator she was facing, but a reptilian hunter lurking in the Florida waterways that would prove equally deadly when darkness fell. It was September 3rd, 2017, in Naples, Florida, where the humid evening air hung thick over the residential canal systems that snaked through the upscale waterfront community. Mindra Twig's single-story home sat directly on the water's edge, offering stunning views of the narrow canal that connected to the larger Caloosahatchee River system. The 52-year-old real estate agent had purchased the property specifically for its prime location, drawn to the peaceful evenings she could spend on her backyard patio overlooking the dark waters. Twig was known throughout the neighborhood as a dedicated professional who worked long hours showing properties across Southwest Florida. Her evenings were sacred, a time when she would unwind from the stress of competitive real estate deals by sitting alone on her patio with a glass of wine, watching the sunset reflect off the canal's surface. The sliding glass door between her living room and patio remained open most evenings, allowing the cooler night air to flow through her home while she relaxed outside. The canal system had been carved through natural wetlands decades earlier, creating an artificial waterway that bisected what had once been prime alligator habitat. Local residents were well aware that American alligators frequented these waters, with sightings reported regularly by homeowners who had grown accustomed to sharing their backyards with these ancient predators. Warning signs posted throughout the community reminded residents to maintain safe distances from the water's edge, particularly during nighttime hours when alligators were most active. That particular evening, Twig had returned home exhausted from a difficult day of failed property showings. She settled into her usual routine, changing into comfortable clothes and preparing to spend her evening on the patio despite the late hour. The property's landscaping extended right to the canal's edge with no barrier or fencing between the seating area and the water, a design feature that maximized the waterfront views but eliminated any protection from aquatic wildlife. American alligators are apex predators that have remained virtually unchanged for millions of years, perfectly adapted for life in freshwater environments. Adult males can reach lengths of up to 14 feet and weigh over 1,000 pounds, with jaw muscles capable of generating bite forces exceeding 2,500 pounds per square inch. These reptiles are opportunistic hunters that typically remain motionless in the water near shorelines before striking with explosive speed. Around 11:40 p.m., a 9-foot male alligator floated nearly motionless along the canal bank, only a few feet from Twig's backyard. Its eyes and nostrils barely broke the surface as it watched the shoreline where she stood near the water's edge. Alligators rarely travel far across dry ground to hunt. Instead, they wait close to the waterline where prey animals approach the shoreline. Twig unknowingly stepped within a few feet of the canal while looking out across the dark water, placing herself directly within the reptile's striking range. Without warning, the massive predator exploded from the canal. The alligator lunged from the water and clamped its jaws around her lower leg just above the ankle. The bite did not snap the bone instantly, but the crushing pressure and backward momentum knocked Twig violently off her feet and toward the canal bank. As she hit the ground, the reptile immediately began pulling. Alligator attacks are built around one objective: dragging prey into the water. With powerful backward thrusts of its body and tail, the reptile hauled Twig across the grass toward the canal before she could regain her footing. She clawed at the ground and tried to grab the patio furniture, but the animal's strength was overwhelming. Within seconds, the alligator had pulled her to the canal's edge. The reptile shifted its grip higher on her leg and dragged her directly into the water, where alligators have their greatest advantage. The surface of the canal erupted into violent movement. Once submerged, the alligator began the infamous death roll, spinning its body in powerful rotations designed to tear flesh and disorient prey. The motion twisted Twig beneath the water while the reptile maintained its crushing grip. Water churned violently as the reptile rotated again and again. In most fatal alligator attacks, victims succumb not only to traumatic injuries but to drowning as the animal holds them underwater. Twig was forced beneath the surface repeatedly as the predator continued its rolling assault. Within minutes, the struggle stopped. The alligator remained in the canal with its prey throughout the night, following its natural instinct to cache food underwater until ready to feed. Concerned neighbors discovered evidence of the attack the following morning when they noticed disturbed landscaping and drag marks leading directly from the canal bank. Wildlife officials immediately launched an investigation. deploying specialized teams to locate and remove the responsible alligator from the canal system. The incident prompted renewed safety warnings throughout the Naples waterfront communities and sparked debates about residential development in natural alligator habitats. Mindra Twig's tragic death highlighted the inherent dangers of living alongside Florida's apex predators, where stepping too close to the water's edge at night can place a person directly within striking distance of one of North America's most powerful reptiles. For Keston Flack, the threat wouldn't come from water, but from the shadows of his own basement, where a mountain lion had found the perfect hiding place to launch its deadly ambush. It was May 22, 2015, in the rolling hills outside Missoula, Montana, where dense forests stretched endlessly toward the Continental Divide. Keston Flack's modest house sat on 5 acres of partially cleared land, surrounded by wilderness that served as a natural corridor for deer, elk, and the predators that followed them. The 34-year-old carpenter had chosen this remote location for its privacy, sharing the property with his girlfriend, who worked as a veterinary technician in town. Flack was known throughout the local construction community as a skilled craftsman who specialized in custom cabinetry and restoration work. His basement workshop contained hand tools, lumber, and half-finished projects that reflected his dedication to traditional woodworking. The house was an older structure that Flack had been renovating, including an exterior basement door that provided direct access to his workshop from the backyard. The property bordered a natural game trail that deer used to move between feeding areas, creating wildlife activity that passed within yards of the house. That spring had brought unusual mountain lion sightings throughout the Missoula Valley, as expanding development pushed the big cats into closer contact with residential areas. Local wildlife officials had issued warnings about securing doors and bringing pets indoors at night. The basement door had been giving Flack trouble for weeks, its old latch mechanism failing to engage properly, despite repeated repair attempts. On busy workdays, he would often forget to double-check that the door had closed securely, leaving it vulnerable to being pushed open by wind or wildlife. His girlfriend had mentioned the faulty latch several times, expressing concern about the security risk it posed in their isolated location. Mountain lions are North America's most efficient stealth predators, capable of moving through dense forest without making a sound. Adult males can weigh up to 220 pounds and measure 8 feet from nose to tail, with powerful hind legs that allow them to leap vertically up to 15 feet. Their retractable claws and muscular build make them perfectly adapted for ambush hunting, and they typically attack prey outdoors using surprise from cover. During the night of May 21st, a large male mountain lion had been tracking mule deer along the forest edge near Flack's property. The deer moved through the game trail that passed only yards from the house, leaving a strong scent trail that kept the predator circling the clearing through the early morning hours. Rather than approaching the house itself, the cougar remained concealed along the tree line where brush and shadows provided perfect ambush cover. Just after sunrise, around 6:20 a.m., Flack stepped outside to retrieve his tool belt before heading to work. Instead of walking straight to the basement door, he followed the narrow path that ran along the edge of the tree line where the game trail crossed the back of his property. The grass was damp with morning dew, and the forest beside him was thick with brush and fallen timber. He paused near the edge of the trail to look toward the woods, where fresh deer tracks had cut through the soft soil overnight, unaware that the cougar had been watching from dense brush only 20 yards away. As Flack turned slightly away from the forest, the mountain lion launched its attack. The predator exploded from the brush in a blur of muscle and tawny fur, covering the distance in 2 powerful bounds. Before Flack could react, the cougar slammed into his upper back and shoulders, knocking him forward onto the ground near the edge of the trail. The cougar's powerful forelegs wrapped around his torso while its hind claws dug into his back to maintain control. In a single fluid motion, the predator shifted its jaws to Flack's throat, clamping down with crushing force. Mountain lions typically kill large prey by biting the throat and suffocating the victim while maintaining their grip. Pinned beneath the animal's weight and powerful forelimbs, Flack struggled briefly as the cougar tightened its hold around his neck. The predator maintained the throat bite for several minutes, cutting off airflow while the victim was unable to break free from the animal's strength. The attack lasted only moments of violent struggle before the cougar's suffocating grip overcame him. Once the victim stopped moving, the predator loosened its hold, but remained over the body, alert and listening for any disturbance. Almost immediately, the mountain lion gripped the clothing near the shoulder and began dragging the body toward the nearby brush line. Using powerful pulls of its forelegs, the predator hauled the victim several yards off the trail and partially into the forest understory, where fallen branches and thick vegetation provided concealment. The drag marks led from the edge of the clearing into the trees, disappearing beneath the dense cover where cougars typically cache prey before feeding. Flack's girlfriend discovered the horrific scene hours later, when she checked on his unusually long absence. Investigators later found disturbed soil along the game trail, signs of the ambush at the forest edge, and drag marks leading directly into the trees. Wildlife officers confirmed the attack was consistent with a cougar ambush along a natural travel corridor used by deer. Kestenflack's death served as a tragic reminder that even familiar outdoor spaces along wilderness edges could become dangerous when large predators followed prey close to human homes. For Abdul Rahman, the danger wouldn't come from a forest ambush but would push through an unsecured door in the dead of night, bringing the terror of the Sundarbans directly into his family's home. It was August 18, 2018, in a remote fringe village along the Sundarbans Delta of West Bengal, India, where the mighty Ganges River meets the Bay of Bengal through a labyrinth of tidal waterways and dense mangrove forests. Abdul Rahman's modest single-room house sat on the edge of this unforgiving wilderness, constructed from weathered wood and corrugated metal like dozens of other homes that dotted the village perimeter. The 41-year-old fisherman had lived his entire life in this precarious balance between civilization and one of the world's most dangerous ecosystems. Rahman supported his wife and 2 young children through daily fishing expeditions in the tidal rivers that snaked through the Sundarbans, navigating treacherous waters where saltwater crocodiles and venomous snakes posed constant threats. His small wooden boat would disappear into the mangrove channels before dawn, returning each evening with whatever catch the dangerous waters had yielded. The family's survival depended entirely on these daily ventures into territory shared with Bengal tigers. The village existed in a state of perpetual vigilance, as tigers regularly ventured from the mangrove forests into residential areas under cover of darkness. Local residents had developed strict security protocols over generations of coexistence with these deadly predators, including the critical practice of barricading doors with heavy wooden beams before sleeping. The flimsy construction of most homes offered little protection against a determined tiger, making these nightly security measures the difference between life and death. That particular evening, Rahman had returned from fishing later than usual, after struggling with damaged nets in rough tidal currents. Exhausted from the long day on the water, he had eaten a simple meal with his family before settling onto his sleeping mat as darkness fell over the village. In his fatigue, he had failed to secure the front door with the heavy support beam that normally prevented it from being pushed open, leaving his family vulnerable to the predators that prowled the village streets after midnight. Bengal tigers are among the world's most powerful and intelligent big cats, with adult males weighing up to 660 pounds and measuring over 9 feet in length. These apex predators possess night vision far superior to humans and can move through dense vegetation with remarkable silence despite their massive size. Their powerful jaws and long canine teeth are designed to deliver killing bites that suffocate prey or sever critical nerves. In the Sundarbans, these tigers have adapted to hunt in tidal environments and have lost much of their natural fear of humans. Around 2:10 a.m., a large female Bengal tiger emerged from the mangrove forest and began moving through the village, following scent trails and investigating potential prey opportunities. The predator approached Rahman's house and tested the front door with her massive paw, discovering that it swung open easily without the wooden beam in place. The tiger pushed through the doorway and entered the single room where the family slept on woven mats. The tiger's presence immediately woke Abdul Rahman, who rose from his sleeping mat as the massive predator moved silently across the dirt floor. In the darkness, he could barely make out the enormous striped form approaching him with deadly intent. The tiger reacted to his movement with lightning speed, lunging forward and seizing his neck in her powerful jaws. The tiger clamped down on his neck, crushing the windpipe while her long canine teeth drove deep along the side of his throat, severing the spinal cord at the base of the skull. The pressure of the bite collapsed the airway and cut the nerve signals controlling his body, causing massive internal trauma and immediate paralysis. Rahman's body went limp as the tiger maintained her grip, ensuring the killing bite had achieved its purpose. The tiger then clamped its jaws firmly around Rahman's neck and began dragging his lifeless body toward the open doorway, following her instinct to remove the kill from the confined space. Her powerful shoulders pulled the body across the dirt floor and out into the village street, leaving a dark trail that marked the path of the attack. Once outside, the tiger continued dragging the body by the neck toward the nearby vegetation at the village edge, seeking cover where she could feed undisturbed. She pulled the body into the shadow of mangrove roots and began feeding, using her claws and teeth to open the torso while remaining alert for any threats or disturbances. Rahman's wife and children had remained frozen in terror throughout the attack, too frightened to move or cry out as the tiger completed her deadly work. They waited in silence until the predator had departed with the body before alerting other villagers to the tragedy that had unfolded in their home. Village elders discovered the drag marks leading toward the mangroves wolves the following morning, confirming the worst fears of the community. Local forest officials launched an immediate investigation and deployed tracking teams to locate the responsible tiger, though the dense mangrove terrain made pursuit extremely difficult. Abdul Rahman's story was a heartbreaking reminder of how quickly the Sundarbans could claim a life when one security measure failed. For Zebi Drunt, the danger wouldn't come from the legendary tigers of India, but from a hungry black bear drawn to abundant harvest season offerings, stored carelessly in his California garage. It was October 9th, 2015, in the rolling hills of Sonoma County, California, where endless rows of grapevines stretched across the landscape during peak harvest season. Zebi Drunt's rental house sat among several established vineyards, surrounded by the aroma of ripening grapes and constant activity of seasonal workers. The 28-year-old vineyard worker shared the modest home with two co-workers, all employed by local wineries that dominated the region's economy. Drunt had moved to California from the Midwest 3 years earlier, drawn by steady work in the wine industry and the appeal of living among scenic vineyards. His days were spent harvesting grapes under the intense autumn sun and loading them into trucks bound for processing facilities. The work was physically demanding but rewarding, offering him a chance to be part of California's wine culture. The house came with a detached garage that the roommates used for storage, particularly during harvest season, when they brought home bags of surplus grapes and discarded food scraps from the vineyards. Bears were well known in Sonoma County, regularly venturing down from forested hills during autumn to search for food. Local residents had grown accustomed to securing garbage and removing attractants, but the rental house's temporary occupants were less familiar with these precautions. Drunt had developed a habit of leaving the garage door partially open overnight to allow air circulation around stored grapes and food waste. Unaware, this practice created an irresistible beacon for hungry wildlife. His roommates had mentioned seeing bear tracks and hearing rustling noises at night, but the exhausting work schedule left little time for addressing security issues. American black bears are highly intelligent omnivores that can weigh up to 600 pounds and stand 7 feet tall on their hind legs. Despite their name, their fur can range from black to brown to cinnamon, and they possess an extraordinary sense of smell that can detect food sources from miles away. These powerful animals are excellent climbers and fast runners, capable of reaching speeds of 30 miles per hour. Black bears usually avoid humans, but can become dangerous if startled at close range near food. Shortly after midnight, a large male black bear descended from nearby hills, following the scent of grapes and food scraps that had been building around Drunt's property for weeks. The bear approached the partially open garage and squeezed through the gap, immediately discovering fermented grapes, discarded fruit, and food waste scattered across the concrete floor. The bear began consuming everything edible within reach, tearing through plastic bags and containers with powerful claws. The noise of crashing objects echoed through the garage as the animal knocked over storage shelves and overturned boxes while searching for more food. The prolonged crashing sounds eventually woke Zebi Drunt in his upstairs bedroom. Confused and disoriented, he made his way downstairs to investigate what he assumed was a break-in. He walked through the kitchen and opened the door leading to the garage, flipping on the overhead lights without awareness of the danger inside. The sudden illumination startled the feeding bear. Black bears usually flee when surprised, but the narrow garage and the human blocking the doorway limited its escape route. The animal lifted its head from the scattered grapes and released a loud huff, swaying its head side to side while popping its jaws, a classic warning display meant to intimidate a perceived threat. Drunt froze in the doorway as the massive animal turned toward him. For a moment, the bear hesitated, stomping the concrete floor and making a short bluff surge forward before stopping abruptly. At such close distance, with the only clear exit partially blocked, the bear's agitation escalated. When Drunt instinctively shifted backward in the doorway, the movement triggered a defensive reaction. The bear lunged forward in a sudden burst of force. The bear's massive body slammed into Drunt, knocking him onto the concrete floor. Instead of a killing bite, the bear began a chaotic defensive mauling, biting repeatedly at his arms and shoulders while swiping with its claws. Its claws tore through clothing and skin, opening deep lacerations across his torso and forearms as Drunt tried to shield his head. Crushing bites to his shoulder and upper chest caused severe trauma and heavy bleeding, while the animal's weight briefly pinned him to the floor. After several seconds of violent thrashing, the bear disengaged once the threat stopped moving. With the doorway clear, the animal bolted past Drunt and fled out of the garage into the surrounding vineyards. Drunt lay severely injured on the garage floor, suffering from massive blood loss, multiple deep lacerations, crushed bones in his shoulder, and traumatic shock. His roommates upstairs had been awakened by the crashing noises, but initially assumed he was dealing with a burglary or raccoon intrusion. When the sounds stopped and Drunt failed to respond, They contacted authorities. Deputies and emergency responders arrived minutes later and found the garage in disarray, with clear signs of a bear encounter, and Drunt critically injured on the floor. Paramedics rushed him to a nearby hospital. Despite emergency surgery and intensive care, Drunt later died from complications related to severe blood loss and internal injuries sustained during the mauling. Wildlife officers later confirmed that a black bear had been attracted to improperly stored food waste in the garage. The animal was not found inside the building and had already returned to nearby hills. The incident shocked the Sonoma County community and prompted renewed warnings from wildlife officials about securing food sources during harvest season. Thanks for watching. Want to see more? Click on your screen now.